Hi guys, here's the second episode in our series of Studio Diaries. So what's happened since I last filmed? In the studio, we've been super busy carrying on with the restocking I was talking about before. This week was our last week having extra team members in, so this week we had Anna, Joanne, Helena in, all assisting us, and today we're back to our core team only in the studio, so it's just me, Jen, Izzy and Katie, and it feels very quiet. But we got an immense amount done, and we just went through all the numbers on all the kits we prepared, and over the last 3 weeks, with all the extra help we've had, we prepared the materials for nearly 1,000 kits. It's sort of quite an unbelievable number, and it just means we feel so much more in control. Given we've got probably about 80 different designs, actually that's not that many kits per range, but it's a really helpful amount to have back on the shelves, back in the drawers, and just means we can now focus on new things again, which is of course the best thing to focus on. So whilst the team have all been pretty fully absorbed working on that, working on framing orders, everything that goes on to the normal running of the business, I've actually been able to have a really creative week this week, which is what I want to talk about in today's Studio Diaries. So I again have 4 little topics I want to go through. I'm going to talk firstly about some new bits of inspiration I found and some places I went to go visit. Then talking about finishing long projects and the satisfaction from finishing something that's been on the to-do pile for years. Third, I'm going to show you a bit of a progress update on those new Botanicals designs I was drawing up last week. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the business planning and branding initiatives, because my branding team came in this week, and so it was really good to talk with them about what we're planning. So let's get stuck in. First up, I want to talk inspiration. Last weekend, my mum came to stay with me. She's an artist, and together we have a very similar aesthetic, very maximalist, very colourful, folk arty, handmade. I mean, I definitely inherited my aesthetic from her rather than the other way around. But it means when she comes to London, we always go see loads of creative shows. So last weekend we went to go see the summer exhibition at the Royal Academy, which, if you don't know, it's the kind of largest, most prestigious open call exhibition in the UK. It's been going on since 1760, I think. And then we also went to go visit Leighton House, which was the artist studio of the artist Leighton. I've written an article on the journal all about my favourite things from the Royal Academy, so I'll put a little link for that down in the bio of this video, so you can go have a look at that and see all the artists and get linked through to their profiles. And then likewise, I'll do the same for Leighton House soon, because that is just mind-blowingly amazing inside. But in this video, I just want to talk about the things that have followed on from that and the things that I have got and taken away from it. So there were 3 artists which really captured me and made me want to go look at their work a lot more from the summer exhibition. The first one was the artist Marley Morris. And whilst I am very much a figurative artist, I like to have people, animals, creatures, nature, recognisable things within my textile designs, actually, I think right at the very core of everything I try to do is colour. And whenever I teach freestyle embroidery, and on our freestyle embroidery course, every single step of the way, all I say is you start everything with a colour. I'm a firm believer a good colour palette saves a bad design. A good design can't save a bad colour palette. So what I loved about Marley Morris's work is its pure colour. It's all about the play of interaction of different colours. She just had 2 pieces in the exhibition, but each one of them had this perfect juxtaposition of the colour palettes with a slight contrast in colour in and amongst a really harmonious palette. And what I loved about discovering her work is it's given me an amazing reference point and someone to refer to who really is a master of colour combinations. I talk a lot about finding inspiration and how to overcome creative blocks, and having people like Marley Morris to be able to reference is really important, because it means if you ever feel overwhelmed or you're struggling to choose, in a way you can go look at that work and think, okay, well that's the type of colour palette she's creating and I love that, so I can start to bring that into my own work. So she was my find number one. The second one is the artist Joe Tilson, and Joe Tilson was an RA and sadly passed away in November last year. I've come across his work quite a bit before because Kit Kemp, who is the kind of owner, designer of the Ferndale group of hotels, has a lot of his pieces on display in the hotels. And if you haven't come across these hotels before, I think there's 5 in London and a couple in New York, and they are the most beautiful, inspiring places. They have an incredible art collection, kind of quite folk art heavy, but real mixed media, a lot of textiles. And Joe Tilson is one of the artists they really collect. And so, seeing some of his pieces at the RA, having him been on the back of my mind for quite a long time, means I finally ordered this book that I have had on my radar for ages. And it's fabulous. So he was a sort of work mainly through like the 1950s. And what I'll do is I'll show you some of the pages. But what I love so much about his work is painting, decorative painting, framing is hugely important within my own work. And it's not often you come across artists where so heavily integrate the frame within their art. You know, Howard Hodgkin is one. He's incredible for how integral the frame is to the actual painting itself. But Joe Tilson is another. And just looking at some of these pieces is hugely inspiring for how the frame shape is part of the piece itself. You know, there's not a separation. I'm sure he wouldn't view these as frames, but they, you know, in my eyes, they are. And there was a couple hanging on the wall in the RA, and the strength from a distance of these entirely patterned pieces, these bold colours, I just thought was totally breathtaking. So I wanted to share this with you because this is a beautiful book that I've been wanting to get for ages. With that in mind, the other artist that I've been obsessing with since the exhibition is a new artist I come across called Jim Andersen, and this parcel just arrived now and I couldn't wait to show you. His work is really illustrative in nature, and I really love all kind of forms of illustration, but I just have to show you these because they're quite incredible pieces. These are lino cuts on a sort of natural paper. There's almost a translucency to them, which makes the colours so strong. These aren't pieces that were on display in the summer exhibition, but actually afterwards I went on his website and honestly I would get every single one if I could. I feel like there's something about them which quite ties with Joe Tilson in a way, but also within my own work. I absolutely adore the border. I love this weird placement of different objects. It sort of tells a story within the border. I think they're super inspirational, and also just from a technical aspect, the idea this is a lino cut, and if you know much about printmaking, given the colours here, there's got to be about 8 layers going on this. It'll be a reductive lino technique. I honestly think the skill in these is unbelievable. So I'm going to put a link to his website below this video, and I am totally obsessed. I'm going to be watching everything he does with bated breath. And I hope by the time I'm grey and old to have a wall absolutely filled with his amazing pieces. So 3 new artists I've come across this week: Marley Morris, Joe Tilson and Jim Andersen, who are really inspiring me and have given me a bit of a zest to get on making. So that takes me on to the next point, which is all about finishing long projects. Having gone to these exhibitions and seen new creative inspiration, I really felt a need this week to make things. I had a bit of time because I was waiting for feedback on the collaboration that I talked about last week. And in a way, I think when you get the urge to make, you have to succumb to that urge, because you don't always have creative energy, and when you do, you've sort of got to take it. So about 2.5 years after I made them, this week I finally framed up some felt applique works I'd made, these horse portraits. About 2.5 years ago, in November 2022, I bought myself a laser cutter, and my dad and I were away for winter, and we spent many hours together playing with the laser. It was a sort of perfect father-daughter activity where I got to do all the fun designing, using all the felt and everything like that, and Dad got to do all the technical side, and he was dead into the laser. And using my laser cutter, I created these different applique pictures. It was really fun because I cut out all the shapes, and then effectively it's a bit like a jigsaw. And so whilst other people would sit in the evening watching TV and things, I'd be sat there with my tweezers, a toothpick and some PVA glue, sticking together my little felt work pictures that I'd made. But as inevitably happens, I came back home, back into normal everyday life in London, and they've just been sat on a shelf ever since. About 1.5 years ago, I ordered some unpainted frames to fit them to be the right size, but I never got around to painting them until this week. So this week I spent time painting the frames, having spent all that time looking at the Joe Tilson pieces, the Jim Andersen pieces. I was desperate. And here are a couple of the finished pieces. This one here, my Samson. Or here we've got Scout. These are pretty intricate frame designs, so each one probably actually took me about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to paint. But it was so fun to be with paintbrush in hand again, to replicate the border designs into the frame, and actually then to see these pieces as I'd intended them right from the beginning, framed up. Now it's all a little bit thought process going on about what do we do with these? Is there a way I can make these into something? Because I think they were so fun to make, fun to paint, and they're going to look pretty fun on a wall too. And actually, I even got a bit of time to frame up this little piece. And this little one, also another felt applique, and is the mini version of my big maxi version, which I'm going to make up into a banner. I'm showing you these because these are at some point going to be something that's part of our range, and it all takes time, and there's so much thought process that has to go in order to work out how you take something from a pure creative project that's possible to do on a one-off into something that we can replicate and produce and make really accessible. So there is an awful lot of work that's going to go in to finding a way to make it possible for you to do these, but I couldn't resist showing you because they were very exciting to do. Third up is a direct update on what I was doing last week. So I mentioned last week that I'd started designing these new botanicals for our Botanicals collections. I started designing our autumn flowers, and so this week I have been stitching. And whilst we already had some different designs from our Botanicals range, which will be coming at different points during the year, actually I wanted new designs that were more related to the period and time of year we're in right now. And so this week I stitched up this design, these alliums, and that's been stitching those in the evenings, and I'm very much here in the middle of stitching up this design, these marigolds, which I'm really loving. It's quite a sort of calming colour palette on these compared to my normal, slightly bolder one. I've got one more to do, and next I'm stitching some dahlias, but they're particularly hard flowers, you know, amazing flowers, super flamboyant, but so layered. It's hard to think through exactly how to get them to translate really clearly and really beautifully in thread. And so that's my plan for the weekend. This weekend I'm going to be finishing stitching these, probably stitching a bit of this piece as well. Hoping to have this piece, these two, and one more stitched by the time I film my next Studio Diaries, so let's see. So that is a lot of sewing that I've been doing this week, and that's a really lovely thing to get to spend time on, because most weeks I actually don't get that much time for sewing. And the final thing that's happened this week that's taken up quite a lot of our thought process is we had our catch up with my branding team. The first people who ever really knew about what I was intending to do with the Fabled Thread were Mark and Rosie, who are who I work with on all things brand. They started working with me about 1.5 years before I actually quit my job and left to start the business, because there are certain things which I can do and there are certain things I can't do. And things like creating our kits in a way that gives you such a special and unique experience is just something actually, without their vision, I would never have been able to do. And so they're so integral to the business. They're an extended part of the team, but they are some of the people most invested in what we do because they, at their core, design the way you interact with our product. This week they were here to talk about 3 new projects. Firstly, to talk about these felt pieces and scoping out what I'm intending to do about them. Secondly, I wanted to talk to them about a new publication idea we've been having internally about creating something more physical that's a source of inspiration, a sort of physical workbook, sketchbook type idea. It's very much an ambitious project and very much something I would love to do if we financially can make it work. But even whilst we're still working it out, getting them involved from an early stage and getting their creative thoughts and getting their creative ideas going is hugely important in how we shape a project. And finally, I just wanted them to see all the latest pieces that we had and all the latest pieces we designed. They design all the various elements that go in the kits, but they don't necessarily always get then the physical piece they've designed. So to have them here and be able to get them to see all the pieces that they have created that have gone into the kits is always really fun. So they're the key things I wanted to talk about this week. And as I said, it was a really creative week this week. Not every week gets to be creative, so when it is really creative, I think it's good to celebrate it. And the final piece of good news is that the big pitch I put together for this collaboration for next year all was received so well. I'd gone really out there on the design and had such amazing feedback, and so we're headlong into the next phase, and that's definitely what's going to be taking up my time next week. But what's really exciting is it's a massive creative confidence boost to know that you should go with your vision, trust your judgment, and believe that other people will come along on the journey with you. So that was a really good piece of news. I hope you all had a good week, and I'm really looking forward to sharing with you next week what we get up to.